be here, and I'm sensing that it would be good. Thank you.
Okay.
So I feel like the end, like the vision, we have the vision, like the collective of at least this realm of the collective that we exist in has the vision. The vision is there. It might not be 100% detailed, but it doesn't need to be. And I see there is, you know, I don't want to call it a path, but part of getting to that vision is having a way to, I guess, a continual process of charting how to get there through the darkness, which is essentially like a constantly a map that is always under revision. And that has there are two pieces of such a map that are needed, like needed with an capitalized N, which is a long-term, super fuzzy sense of a path, and a immediate compass. Not even like a very short distance flashlight. So how I see things is the long distance, super fuzzy map involves extreme decentralization of as much as we can. And I think that pretty much everybody understands that, who is in this, who has gotten to this point of the thinking process. The short beam flashlight, I think, might, especially with this pandemic, is in need of a fresh wave, so to speak. And that was part of the point or the inspiration of that question I wrote down. And I wrote it down because we're all thinking about it. You know, what symbologies, how do we make use of the pandemic in a way that turning something a time of you know, everything that is happening right now with all of us collectively and individually, it's right. We're all right. How can we best dance with it? What are the best ways to dance with this? And you know, my initial thought was it presents an opportunity for people who have not yet examined the circumstances of our society to really spend some actual time and focus on them, on the circumstances within which we live currently. And I thought that communication that links the pandemic to what we were already living within might be a powerful step in the dance. And so I asked, what symbolisms can be drawn, because there is nothing more quickly understood in a gut sense. There's nothing that your gut can grasp more quickly than a metaphor that you've experienced, like like something that you have an actual experience with, a lived experience with. And we've all had this lived experience now. The entire world, for the first time in a long time, has now a shared lived experience. And
I don't mean to derail your thought process there, but a shared experience, how would you describe this shared experience? Because I see different people reacting in different ways. And so I want to get there with you, but what experience are we sharing exactly?
right, and that's that's something that also came up for me, and I'm obviously it's a train of thought speech here that I'm working
Mm-hmm.
through. Because we are all within each nation and between nations in the world. We have a different experience of how the pandemic is affecting us because of our socioeconomic status. And
Well, I think the thing I want to tease out there
yeah,
is I think, well, definitely for sure, people are having different experiences here. Some are having grief experiences, whether it's loss of a job, whether it's loss of a loved one. Um, some people are having hunger experiences. Some people are having, well, I'm an essential worker and that means I'm special experiences. But I think one of the things that might be as universal as anything is fear.
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
That everybody is having this collective fear experience. And so if you're wanting, that's kind of what I wanted to get to when you talk about everybody's having a shared experience. Let's name it, and I think the name is fear.
yeah.
So now carry on. Now that we
No,
have.
that's thank you. That's prescient. And yeah, so I guess that um, that then leaves us with what do I want to open up how that could be played with, because I feel like I don't know, I feel like it's yeah, it's something that I feel called to
Mhm.
to examine closely and dive into and get mucky with. Um, it's a fear. We're all sharing fear, but we all know the one of the ultimate causes of the fear. Um, it's loosely extraordinary, unprecedented uncertainty. Um, and more precisely, a biological phenomenon that we have no control over right now. That we don't really have control over at all.
But I have said since the very beginning that I'm less afraid of the virus and more afraid of what happens when the economy collapses.
Right.
Because that's my fear has not been about getting sick. I'm not afraid to die. My fear is about what that looks like. How does that happen? How does it come about? And in a country that has more guns than people, when people get desperate and afraid, bad shit starts to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's been more of my fear all along. And I don't think we've begun to see what that's going to turn out to be through
Yeah.
all of this. That's what makes this a very healthy discussion at this point, because we still have room to start to put plans together and start to envision and start to talk about what symbols must we presence, so that people start to realize the security, the safety doesn't come from a vaccine. Security, safety doesn't come from social distancing. Security, safety comes from taking care of each other, having healthy relationships, and having healthy nature. And we have gotten so far away from healthy relationships and so far away from healthy nature under this existing current modern paradigm. How do we recalibrate? How do we take a deep breath and say, wow, the air is a lot cleaner, I'm seeing more animals, what does that mean? And do we want to go back to the way things were that drive the animals back under cover and make the air dirty again? Why does that make sense? And so, how do we presence that kind of, how do we get back to health? We are sick. We are very sick. And it's not COVID. It's, we have a sickness called capitalism and patriarchy and racism and genocide. And what does it look like to live differently? And here's a chance to remember what it was like to have clean air. Remember what it was like to hear animals in the backyard in the morning, because there's no traffic noise driving them away. Okay, so do we really want to go back to a daily commute to a bullshit job? Probably not. What does it look like to not have to do that?
Hmm. So what came up for me is like a really, thank you, like a really poignant, um, calling out of the real, yeah, the real fear, and and I think there's an important, that might be an important thread on the topic of cultivating um, our personal ability to notice distrust and self, uh, I guess, every man for themselves mentality,
Mhm.
every person for themselves. And so maybe that's a line to dig into, because I do, because that then leads to the vision,
Mhm.
the destination, so to speak. Um,
If I may, Paul, your thoughts.
Yes. So, three letters, U, B, I. Universal basic income is now favored by 3/4 of the House Democratic caucus. That is a policy waiting to happen. There is, even if we were to fail to make it happen, a huge, there is a security blanket that at the moment no one feels any warmth from. No one even knows there is such a blanket. And that's called, well, no, I do not know privately how I'm going to have food or water or pay my bills or, just meet the most basic human needs for myself and my family because of this disruption. And my state government, my county government tell me they can't figure it out. Um, but what I know for sure is that there are people who care that I be able to meet those needs, like lots of them, right? There is a unmistakable, unavoidable rising up of people demanding. Like, Bernie's not running anymore. It's time for us to run. And what I'm running for is I want to be part of a community with you, a big community, the American community with you. And I want every person in America to know I am completely unwilling for one of us to not have food or water. That's over. Just done. So I think there's interesting things to talk about how do you convey public demands in this situation, because we're supposed to not be in the streets. I think that has to end very soon. You know, there are Trump people in the streets. I will be in the streets. I just cannot stand it. For there not to be an outpouring and unmistakable. I mean, I'm thinking about just stopping eating and just doing a very public, I will starve myself to death. If that's what I have to do to know that children are not going without food, effing water in my country because this dipshit economy couldn't quite manage to pay their, you know, find some degrading and destructive thing for their parents to do that they could be paid a pittance for so that they could have food and water. No, that's just got to be over. So I think we need to be making those kinds of very simple pledges, right? Because we can get into the intricacies. We can get into what does this tell us about the climate crisis, or, you know, how do we avoid resuming a destructive or blah, 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 blah. But the truth is, there's no realistic scenario for a future you would want anyone you loved to inhabit that does not involve ending fear of deprivation. We have to get rid of it. We have to get rid of it, even if it wasn't because we're nice, compassionate people. We have to get rid of it because it propels people into activity, right? They're doing it because they have to. Not to be a failure, not to have children whose needs they can't meet, not to encounter the bottomless want, the bottomless emptiness and deprivation that has become kind of the motivating force in our culture, is the fear of that, right? I mean, it's the motivating force of Charles Koch. Why does he need more money and control all the time? Because he is empty. He is a big devouring void. But anyhow.
Paul, am I correct that when you started this, you said there were 3 things you wanted to name, and that UBI was the first? Did I hear that correctly?
Universal Basic Income, UBI.
3 letters, UBI.
No, I got that. Oh, 3 letters,
3
not
letters.
3 things. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I was still waiting for your other 2.
Oh, you can text UBI. This takes 15 seconds. Text UBI.
No, I'm familiar with it.
No, that text UBI to 50409 on your smartphone. That's the number for ResistBot. You will only get 1 prompt. All you have to do is type yes. It sends a letter in your name. It's an excellent letter.
I'm on a very insecure line. It keeps going in and out. I heard you say text UBI, and I said I was familiar with it, not understanding where you're going. I apologize. And then you said more, but it dipped in and out. So would you just repeat it again, please?
The number you text it to on your smartphone is 50409. That's the number for ResistBot.
Okay.
You will only have one more step. You will get a prompt saying, do you want to send a letter calling for a $2,000 universal basic income? It goes up if you have kids. That's the baseline. Andrew Yang organized this. So, you know, I mean, this is not Paul in some touchy-feely fit of compassion. This is just how sane people in this reality are thinking. So let's reclaim sanity for us. And let's text that and tell everyone we know to text UBI to 50409, because that's one way to create, at least for Congress. Then, I still think we need some way of letting people know we're doing that. I think we need to make videos. Just say, hi, I'm here to say as a human being, it's not okay for me, for one human being in this country, to be without anything essential to life because of this disruption at all, period.
I feel, thank you. Thank you for that. It's, that is definitely, I sense like that's the direction that I've been looking for. Part of me is fed up with resist bots, with the text this to daily causes automated line, and will connect you with a pre-written letter that you check a box on. That's something that people can do and forget about 5 minutes later. And I would like to explore ways to imprint upon people that this is something we can't forget about. Because not all of us are living in the change maker, crisis aware mentality. And I'm not, I guess I don't want to try to enforce that on anyone. I would rather see people get inspired to come to that place of being, thinking, and living on their own in a self-proliferating manner, which is that's the part, I guess, that I'm looking to find. I'm searching for what turns a resist bot concept and action. How can that become a self-magnifying and self-proliferating cultural meme?
Can I put something out on the table, and that is rent. There are millions of people that are unable to pay rent, struggling to pay rent, foregoing food to pay rent, and even including people that have mortgage payments and don't have a job and are having to deal with will I lose my house kind of a thing. Everybody's got this, not everybody, millions of people have this existential fear of losing their place to live. And that has already struck. We've already gone through April 1st and May 1st with people having to cope with that conundrum of what do I pay next. And I think that's a way in that's getting the attention of even people that wouldn't consider themselves to be activists or progressive or anything like that. It strikes at the heart of my ability to survive is I may be out on the street sleeping in my car. And so I think if we can find a language that reaches into that fear, reaches into people that are having that conversation with their loved ones and having that conversation with their friends and neighbors, you know, I think that might be the biggest market we can tap right at the moment.
And I really like that. Sorry, because it can be and is asking to be tied into indigeneity.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it is easily made apparent that the fear of losing a place to live was always there.
Mhm.
That is why you have a shitty job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it ties into, you know, food, water, housing, and healthcare. I mean, it doesn't get much more basic than that. And all four of those are present in the fear today. And so, yeah, it's, I mean, you could tackle the food. I think food is less obscure because people still have full grocery stores to go to. And so I don't think people are too terribly worried about food as much as people are worried about their housing.
Well,
And healthcare. I mean, what's even the Trump government is saying, well, if you need to be tested for COVID, the federal government will make sure that's free. Gee, let's see. Free healthcare. God, I wish there was a word for that. Free healthcare for everyone. I wish we had a word for that. Billionaires are contributing to food banks. God, I wish there was a way billionaires could fund food banks on a regular basis. And maybe the IRS could administer that program. I wish we had a way around that problem. Yeah, I mean, all these things they can be solved. We know how to do this. It's not rocket science. It's a change of perspective. And that's why I like the symbology piece that you were starting with, because what's this, how do we symbolize this? How do we what's the metaphor? What's the myth we start to spread about how things change and can change or should change?
I have a foundational experience, and I know this doesn't fix it for you. This is just for our discussion. I'm not saying go tell them that Paul told you, but I have a foundational experience. The earth itself, herself, communicated to me in an unmistakable way that people needed to know that they were welcome here, that they were supposed to feel at home here, right? That this is a place where we're provided for. And that, you know, she is inviting us with great generosity and hospitality to come help ourselves. That's the message from the earth. And it was made very clear to me that the first and most important step in us being able to answer that invitation, the first thing for me to do, if I wanted to help that happen, was to improve, to try to eliminate the fear that lives between human beings. That in order to get us linked up with the interdependence of all life, linked up with the miracle of life, with life as a gift, with nature, to know that life is one thing, that it isn't, you know, my life, and then you're in a separate compartment of life, and then the trees are in a separate compartment of life. It's life. But that to get there, the cruelty that we inflict on each other, which is the way I like to put it, is your money or your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rent is you have no right to be here, your money or your life.
Mm-hmm.
You may think you have a secure place in the world, but you don't. and you have no right to exist, period. And if you don't fork over some money, you're going to be on the street like a non-person. Um, so everything that's essential to our life, right? That's a little more than food and water. That's a secure place of your own where you can have a private bodily function, if nothing else. There's a little more to it, but everything that's essential to life, when we say, hand me the money if you want that, what we are saying is, you do not have a right to life, right? You yourself are a deficit that has to be filled because there is no reason for you to be here. You have no innate value. Until you prove yourself useful to whoever the fuck happens to have the money. And as money becomes more and more concentrated, the people who have it become more and more abstracted, less and less able to imagine themselves as part of anything, part of a family, right? Their own family, part of anything that isn't me, mine, more. So leaving it up to those people to decide what it is that I, who have no innate value and am basically a black hole, what do I have to do in order to fill it out so that I can have a little space of existence? Leaving it up to them is, just that's going to get worse and worse as it has. We were, General Motors was at one point the largest company in America, and people actually earned enough to live without fear. Walmart is our largest employer, private employer now. And of course, they pay so little that you require public assistance. Right? All the reforms Trump's tried to make, or the Republicans try to make to food stamps, are about turning public assistance into something that is only available as a subsidy for Walmart's wages. Mm-hmm. So that we can return to a long American tradition of paying people who have to sell their life for a wage, their waking hours of their very small, little, finite, mortal human life. They have to sell that. That those people should be paid less than the cost of subsistence, because if they were to relax for 1 minute, the only reason that they have to earn a wage, the only reason they don't have land and wealth, that they're not of independent means, is that they have a character defect. So we would not want to pay those people the actual cost of existing. They need to be kept on a treadmill that is always accelerating, or they will just lapse into degeneracy. You may think I'm exaggerating. There's a wonderful book called The Shadow of the Poorhouse, all about this. This is how wage earners were regarded until around 1937 by the people who mattered, whose opinion had some effect. So your money or your life has just been getting worse and worse. And if you say your money and your life to the lower 60% of the income distribution, they'll know exactly what you need. So I think that's another thing we should explore, is let's be blunt. Let's call it what it is. I do or I don't have a right to exist. Because if we can agree that we all do have a right to exist, we're a hell of a lot closer to people in Africa having a right to exist. And stopping anything that prevents that. We start affirming, yes, it's good that we're here. A lot of things get possible.
And we even have a term in the language that we use without even really processing what it means, and that's the cost of living. And so, Paul, you referenced earlier, life is a gift. And yet, once you've been given this gift, now there's a cost to maintain it. How crazy is that? I mean, there is no cost of living. No, you were gifted the life, and now it's your life to gift, and that's what we should be doing, is gifting our life to others. But not a cost of living. No.
And it's
Kidding.
always the same to us as to nature. You know, we don't need those trees. We don't need that species that's in danger of extinction. This isn't needed. That's not needed. This serves no purpose. That serves no purpose. Yes, I have billions of dollars, but it's not enough. So something that is alive and unique, whose value I know nothing about because I'm an asshole who is profoundly alienated and has his every window of his soul slammed shut. You know, nothing can be allowed to be what it is. Nothing can be given the leisure to reveal to our attention what it's there for. You know, we have that phrase, pay attention. Attention, when you pay it, always pays you back.
Hmm. Mm.
We don't make it up about indigenous people having all this wisdom. They really do. And it's because they pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So two things that struck out to me. One, the first one was that we are a black hole, as the wage earners are like a black hole, you said. And it struck me because I was like, well, black hole is actually all consuming. I think that is, and I felt like the black hole was simply the image, not really the phenomena of the black hole was your metaphor. It was the image of nothingness, of being absent to the eye, of being invisible, undetectable.
Stuff goes in and doesn't come out.
Well, but that I think is applied. That side of the metaphor is more applied to those at the very top,
Mm-hmm.
the Kochs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, and I'm going to finish and move on from here, but I thought that, well, if that is the case, then in the material phenomenon of the universe, there are the density with which that at which material coalesces, if it comes together in a large enough mass, it becomes all-consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes together at a little bit less than that, it is only for giving, for sharing, for giving, for putting out. That's all it does to some extent, other than orbits, of course. But and that struck me as something that I think is that was just a reflection, because what also struck me, I think, is more fruitful, was you're saying that people who are wage earners do not deserve our respect, our care, and any true valuation of themselves as dignified, self-determining
Mm-hmm.
sources of light in the world. And it's because of a character deficit. And I guess that struck me because I was like, wow, that is essentially that character is the source of most conservative viewpoints is that, you know, the individualism and character, that ethos, and I guess what came to me from there is that I guess what came to me, and I'm wondering if it feels like a distraction, just like the black hole thing did to me. The virus does not discriminate based on your character
Or your income and wealth.
Yeah. Just as income and wealth does not discriminate on your true character. Realistically, I mean, what the fuck does character mean?
Right.
Right? Like, it's nonsensical when you really get into it. And I'm wondering what came to either of you guys from what I've just shared.
Well, I think character is defined by the culture. And, you know, when Paul was talking earlier about nobody being hungry, that was how humans evolved over tens of thousands of years, where if anybody in the tribe was hungry, everybody was hungry. And if anybody was full, everybody was full. There wasn't a 1% class that was full when everybody else was hungry. That just did not happen. And you knew you needed your tribe to survive, because the ultimate penalty that the tribe could punish someone with would be banishment, exile. Go out there by yourself, because you cannot survive by yourself. That is a death sentence. And so we understood that everybody has unique gifts. Some people are better hunters, some people are better cookers, some people are better babysitters, whatever, you know, people have their gifts, and life is a gift, and your job is to give your gifts to the community, to nature, to the earth, to fit in, to work with everything else, to be grateful to the deer that gives up its life for you and your tribe. Okay, and the best place to store the excess deer meat that you got on your hunt is in the belly of your brother, because then your brother will return the meat to you at something you need at some future date. And so that is a completely different way of living compared to, oh, you need to do some bullshit job so you have enough money so that you can pay rent to somebody who has a claim to land that you don't. You know, Winona LaDuke gave a metaphor one time that I will never forget. She says, for thousands of years, we knew where the salmon were going to be running. We knew where the deer were going to be and when not to take the deer because it was their birthing season. We knew where the nuts were going to be and when they were going to be harvestable. We knew when the berries were going to be ripe. And we had a wonderful life. And then along comes these colonists and they say, oh, wait a minute, you get this 1 acre and you have to live on what you get off of this 1 acre. My acre didn't have nuts. It didn't have berries. It didn't have fish. It didn't have deer. How the hell was I supposed to live? And so, you know, to me, that sums it up really well in terms of, do you live within your environment or do you live outside of your environment? And you cannot survive outside your environment. And this is what we're seeing now, is how we cannot live outside of the environment. And so how do we have this conversation with someone who's worried about not being able to pay the rent, or worried they have a fever and they can't go to the doctor because they're afraid they'll have a bill
Or get deported.
or get deported. Mm-hmm.
It's scary, Benny. This is a scary time. It is frightening to me personally that I've now had this conversation with, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 individual Central Coast progressives that these are fine human beings. I am not talking dirt about them as people. This is a cognitive problem. They think, it's the best way to put it, the only way that they will express empathy, concern, fellow feeling for people who cannot meet their basic needs, the tens of millions, the networks of food banks that I am in touch with say lack money to buy food. You know, the food banks they're just wiped
Overwhelmed.
out across the country. So when I try to talk to my progressive friends about it, if what I'm saying is you should give a donation to a charity, they'll put up with it. If what I'm saying is, hey, maybe, you know, to the extent that shelter in place allows, you want to volunteer, they'll consider it. If what I'm saying is, hey, guess what? A huge number of our fellow citizens, far more than charity or volunteering or any kind of one-on-one personal effort can address, are in real danger of dying because they can't wash their hands. You know, these people feel that no one cares about them. They are just in an agony of isolated lack. Is a horrible thing to experience. I can't meet my needs. I'm all alone with it. No one gives a shit. If I try to tell them that we have a responsibility to let them know they're not alone, that it's a political problem, that it's about our body politic, right? That our body politic, and this, I'm serious about this, our body politic could die, Benny. They do. Body politics can die. Doesn't happen frequently, it's unnatural, but it can happen. And when it does, you get Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, you know, it's a sign of how far things have gone that I'm having trouble communicating something that to me seems so damn elementary. You know, led to some wonderful writing, but I don't really think I should have to explore new forms of poetry to explain something this simple.
Mm-hmm. And this is totally off topic, but you know, I often lately have been wondering, how did I get to see this all so clearly? Because obviously, like you said, Paul, even people I know that I think should be getting this are not getting this. And I chalk it up nominally to the media, you know, that the media is not presencing any of this. And so it makes me wonder, how did I get so privileged to see and have the long vision and see what's going on here? I don't know what the answer is, but I think if we can find the answer to that, we have a first clue as to how we start to address it. Because clearly we're not getting our message heard in any way that's meaningful.
It's like cellular amnesia. The cells of the body politic, cells that there is a body whose life they draw life from, right? That they are always exchanging life, that life is flowing between them and everybody in this body politic. Well, that is literally the case. we just don't want to have to find it out by seeing the massive annihilation of life, of freedom, of the entire human character of our society. Spontaneity, expansiveness, the things that make life bearable.
Love and connection and relationships.
By a totalitarian regime,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I can just see it. Donald Trump
Absolutely.
announcing that he is the savior of these people who
Mm-hmm.
can't eat, whose water is being
We've
shut
had a
off.
second wave of virus. Y'all can't go vote. We're just going to have to carry on. And when we can vote, we will, I promise you. Yeah. You know, I say that to people and they're like, no, you're crazy. That'll never happen. Oh my God. Oh my God.
And so I want to clarify something with you, Paul, which is that when you speak of the cells of the body politic, are you speaking of the politicians or are you speaking of everybody?
You know how we think of, well, people who are not me think it's very simple that, you know, corporate and financial elites run the show. It's a closed system. We have no impact on it. I read emails from Citizens Climate Lobby discussion group people saying that so many times a day. But the truth is that many, much, much worse things would be happening. The only reason they aren't is because even though our body politic is dormant, it is not well, it is not lively, it is not active. Its systems are sort of, well, anyhow, it's not a good shape, but even when we are not coming together, reaching consensus, making a consensus demand, the people say you will now do this. Even when we're not doing that, our minds are being read. Our tolerances are being read. Our willingness to suffer and our willingness, this is so important right now, to see each other suffer, to see our fellow citizens suffer, are constantly being plumbed. That's why you heard billionaires saying things like, before the shelter in place, they didn't want shelter in place first. So you had billionaires saying, no, people just need to keep working. Yeah, of course they'll die. Who cares? I mean, they were literally talking like that. And that's not just, I'm a sociopath. That's also, it's that, but it's also, what happens if I say this? You know, and the answer, unfortunately, is almost nothing. But still, the point is, no, we only think the body politic doesn't exist or that we've outgrown it or it's, you know, withered away or whatever the hell it is. People who are not me think. But the truth is, to the extent that we have intentions toward each other, you know, every time you talk to me, Benny, there's a tone of thoughtfulness. You don't waste my time. There's, you know, if I've said something and it relates to what you're thinking about, I'll hear some acknowledgement of it. You know, our daily discussion groups, people are constantly expressing relationships. We're saying we're related in this way. That's a body politic, right? I would love it if our body politic was aware of itself more and its ability to make decisions. But maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe this will jumpstart our body politic. I hope so.
And I just want to key off of what Paul said there about trying to gauge the reaction every time a policy is considered. And this has been my biggest fear, not the surveillance and stuff that happens, but my biggest fear about the social media is all the data that is being collected that builds a picture of what people are concerned about, how they will react, what they will get excited about, what they will hate. That's the real power in big data, is to be able to predict what's going to happen. If we do this, this many people will think this, that many people will think that, and it'll finally we'll win. You know, that kind of it becomes predictive. You know, they know enough about you. They know as much about you as you know about yourself, maybe more, and they know how you're going to react. You know, we're going to make this announcement, and we know this many people will cheer it, and this many people will boo. So yeah, it just makes it that much harder for us to change the direction we're headed.
Yeah, thank you. And it's funny you bring that up, because my mind has been wandering towards social media and social phenomena. I guess the intention in me was a viral video. And the alternative, the first alternative that has come to mind, is music, a viral song. But there aren't people in the street bumping music out of their cars and on their bikes like there used to be, to share with everybody that they pass.
And we've also managed to work our way into a time where if you use the wrong word, your video can get taken down.
Yeah.
I work with a group called Student Loan Tutor, and they help people settle their student loan debt without paying an arm and a leg. And believe it or not, there's lots of programs out there that help you do that. There's ways you can use your tax returns to do that. And that's what got me involved with them. They have been having a 1.5-year struggle with Facebook to be able to put ads, paid ads. Facebook will not accept their money to pay for ads saying, we will help you with your student loan debt.
What?
Yeah. Facebook says, nope, we're not going to take your money. Nope, you can't buy that ad. Nope. Student loan debt, that topic is taboo. You can't tell people settle their debt. Yes, honest to God. They just put together they just put together a video, a 1.5-minute commercial about the work they do with student loan debt, and they do not say student loan debt. They say bananas. So you got into this project, you're probably 19 years old, and you got into this project and you thought you were going to take you're going to be able to get something so you could get lots of bananas. And it turns out you have to give back lots of those bananas. And we can help you not give back quite so many bananas. And so, yeah, and it looks like they're about 3 days away now from knowing if that ad is going to fly with Facebook or not. But yes, they have been unable to pay Facebook to put an ad on that uses the term student loan debt. That's what I mean. It's so so restricted nowadays. You know, if you say something that contradicts the advice coming out of the WHO on COVID, they'll take it down. Then no questions asked. No, 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 that's not good advice. That's misinformation. We're just not going to let you say that. And so, yeah, you kind of have to be very careful about the words you use too, because you might use the wrong word and then you'll disappear. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I honestly don't have a good answer as to how we get the word out. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what how we have these discussions other than one-on-one, and we don't have time for that. We don't have time to have one-on-one discussions. So, but I just don't know what it looks like to do it any other way.
Terry?
Yeah.
I have a thought about that. You are a very sober seeming, like, I don't think anyone listening to you talk would question your credibility. I can be like that. I don't find it enjoyable, but I can put on a tie and look like I am somebody. So, you know, I think maybe we do some Talking Heads videos, very short, just very simple, laying out the logic. This is what we need to do. You know, here are the ways that we can solve these problems. Here's why, in fact, we can make something good out of this catastrophe. Create a little good news. People are always hungry for good news.
Good news, yeah.
But I think we should, you know, we should try that. I think we should try every avenue of communication that we can come by. I mean, we will not regret doing everything that we could think of to nip the too many tens of millions of Americans too freaked out about not knowing how they are going to meet very basic human needs and being absolutely convinced that no one gives a shit. Hand unlimited power to the worst people we have. So I think we could not invest excessively in preventing that, even if we don't know if it's going to have an effect.
Sure. Sure. And I'd be up for that. It would be a long list of topics, but yeah, maybe just keep it short, keep it focused on one thing at a time. Put out a whole series.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe this is a good time. Maybe
Yes,
this
Nancy.
is a good time for me to do something.
Please, Nancy.
Because I'm on the verge of putting out another series within reach, a future we can all live with. And it is all, as I've said to you, the most promising solutions that I've been able to collect over a number of years across the various domains of our society, and looking at the many different ways systems change has in fact been brought about. And distilling from that some guidelines that began, the very first one in my last series, the very first show was called Change the Story. And it was addressing the issue that I understand Benny to have raised. And within a week or two at the most, I think I'm going to pull back from just about everything for a week or so I can focus.
We are not hearing you, Nancy. You said you're going to pull back for a week.
Bandwidth, it seems like.
Bandwidth, yeah. Nancy, try turning off your cam. Oh, now I don't even see a microphone icon on her signal. Yeah, Nancy, don't do the video. Just do microphone.
Absolutely. That won't help much. My connection is just terrible, but I'll try to get this thought out. Anyhow, I'm working out what are the various ways that people can contribute ideas, information, and so forth. And it will take a while because there is much to embrace, and much of what we've learned to be able to share. And while, if this doesn't die on me again, I'll just say my initial take.
It died.
uh,
An example of why I said that, Derek, about you, I just saw.
Can
There
you
was-
hear me?
Yes,
Can you?
go ahead.
Yes.
Can you
now
hear
we,
me?
Now we can hear you, Nancy.
Can you
yes.
hear me?
Yes.
It
The last thing we heard was you're going to take a
depends
wee.
on.
No, not hearing you now.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I'll catch up later with this. I was just saying, I'll be putting out the outline. Thank you, Derek. And talking out with people ways that this could be a collaborative process and a collaborative project. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the only other thing I would have said earlier was that in response to the question about metaphor, it depends on, in part, what I'm trying to do with the metaphor. It's the effort of sense making that we're engaged with each other to help each other better understand ourselves in relationship to the situation we're in and what we may be able to do about it, giving meaning to our own lives. And then the other topic was trying to communicate with other people, with various other people for different people or different situations, different purposes, different topics, different metaphors may work well. And part of this work that I've been doing for several years now is in part working with metaphors to find the metaphors that can reach people around a particular issue or opportunity or understanding of what is needed. So I'll just put that out there. When it's ready, I'll share it with you. That doesn't preclude ongoing conversations. At the moment, I find myself preoccupied with that as we're talking and appreciating all of the insights and metaphors, very rich conversations you've been putting out.
That's great, Nancy.
Did you get to hear all of that?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we did. And I would cherish the opportunity to have a conversation with you about living in the gift economy, as opposed to the scarcity and competition of the current economy, living in a gift economy of abundance and caregiving and sharing the
Absolutely.
gifts. And so
Absolutely.
I would like to have that conversation at some point.
Yes, in fact, a big chunk of this are interviews. Many of us have deeply considered messages and resources to turn to and ways of framing things. So part of it is just a lot of podcasts or interviews, short or long or brief videos that are expressive of different pieces of the larger puzzle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Nancy, I've been recording this, so we will at some point get you access to the recording because you've been dropping in and out. So
Yes, thank you so much.
yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, Benny,
Mm-hmm.
but a while ago you were talking about kind of maybe two phases, I think. Sort of, I got the impression kind of, where we need to end up is a very decentralized, arrangements for organizing human activity. That's exactly right. And I am personally convinced there is this need for America for a whole long list of reasons that we just need to establish as a country, as a people, that we all have a right to exist. The government is going to be proceeding on that. The universal basic income is not complicated, but anytime you like, I would be happy to sort of pursue the return to local life, and how that relates. You know, I just think we have a hoop or two to jump through, and there are things we need to decide as a people before we can begin to do the work we need to do locally. But COVID-19 is an awfully compelling reason. This disruption is really teaching us that we want to be locally food self-sufficient, for example. So I think we're being called to that.
If I could build on that, the way I understand it is that I use the phrase think locally, act globally, and change personally. And think locally means understanding that life is mostly lived at the local level. That's where most of the decisions should be made. That's where most of our basic needs should be, etc. And yet the viability of that turns on the functionality of what occurs at higher or other levels. And so my question is, what are things that have to be done at a regional or state or national or global level? What has to be done there? And what are the specifications? What are the criteria for that being done all? And how do we assure that, for example, right now I have asserted, we already have a global government. It's just, it's absolutely non-transparent and non-accountable in any way, but it's calling certain global institutions, formal and some informal, are calling most of the shots that then shape the structure all down to the very local level within which we are then forced to operate, well or poorly. And most of those structures are designed at odds with or indifferently to what is needed to make things work locally. So that's just my spin on what I was hearing Paul saying. And so trying to get clear on what must be local and what that has to be or is best done at a higher level. What are the rules, the intentions and rules and processes at those higher levels that optimize what occurs at the local level? Does that make any sense?
It does, Nancy, and I'm sorry, Benny, if I'm talking too much. It gives me a moment to tell you what I meant the other day about where I thought systems theory and my way of thinking might conflict. In the my feeling about governing institutions is that how they came into being and the intentions that shaped them over time, when there were conscious intentions shaping them, actually sort of determine what they are. And the role they play, the ecological role they play, in the ecology of power, you might call it. So the federal government has a key role, and it's not the one most people think of, but in America, this is crucial. The federal government is the place where we decide what has to be true for every single person. So, you know, the first objection to a decentralized America is slavery. And it does, of course, take the federal government to put an end to it. But right now, there are forms of predation and oppression in some of the red states that, if we knew more about them, would give us nightmares. So the rule, I think, is that there are different sort of cognitive challenges. One of the cognitive challenges is, what are the principles that have to be satisfied? What are the sort of moral requirements of our life together? That, I think, is going to be a federal, a national conversation, I will say, that is urgent. And the things you and I both want to happen in terms of revivifying local body politics, because that is indeed where democracy arises out of the ground, I think are actually not in conflict with needing to have that national conversation. To frame them and empower them is a really important word, because that's the other helpful thing that the national government can do, is make up for grossly unequal resources. So I will just say there is an ecology of power and leave it at that.
Got it. Thank you, Paul.
Paul, I wanted to clarify what I want to ask you to clarify what the invitation you had voiced to me was about, the long vision that, like, you described. That could, I guess what I want to ask is, can you rephrase what you voiced that sounded like an invitation before Nancy and your recent exchange about political structurings?
I was going to invite you to lead us, because you started out in a very promising way on this topic, into a discussion of decentralization. Because that is also urgent. They're just kind of interdependent. We need both. But I would love to hear you talk about that.
And do you feel like that's where we should go, right here, right now, or something to come next at a later date?
I just wanted you to know that if you wanted to get to it, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, totally. And I would love to dive into that with everyone here and more, maybe but I feel like right now I would like to return to the flashlight holding, if you guys feel like that's where you also would like to return to in the conversation.
Do you want to guide us a little?
Yeah. You and Derek came to an agreement that you would like to make a video or videos. And I'm really happy to hear that. I am wondering if it might be, if you all would agree that strategizing on the nature of the video, or the first video attempt, would be the next best place to go together.
Sure.
The only reason I hesitate is because I would like to do yes and.
Mhm.
So yes, a conversation about the video and the next steps, and a conversation about the decentralization piece, because as Paul has presented so beautifully, the body politic is very sick, and the body politic as currently constructed depends upon centralization.
Mhm.
And so as decentralization comes into the conversation, there's going to be huge pushback. So we really need clarity on what we mean by that in order to bring in the appropriate symbols and have the appropriate language to be sure and get our point across without getting absolutely crushed.
Mhm.
And just to take a 30-second example here, solar power, okay? So Hurricane Irma blows into Florida, and 95% of the people in Florida that had solar panels on their roof had no power, even though the power was out to the whole state, despite having solar panels, because they did not have batteries. Being hooked into the grid and having net metering is a cheaper way to put panels on your roof, but it also keeps you part of the centralized control system of the grid. And this is why they make it so difficult for people to have battery storage, so that they can disconnect from the grid and have local autonomy. This is a power, not an electrical power, but a political power issue, where even though it looks like you're taking steps to be independent, you're not allowed to be independent. And decentralization, in no matter what form we want it to take, whether it's food or power or housing or whatever, we're going to have to be very careful to phrase it and language it in ways that don't draw too much attention too soon, and still manage to get us to the goal we have, without the powers that be just stepping in and crushing the movement.
Yes. Yeah.
And it might be worth looking at. I know way less about what I'm going to mention than I wish I did, but there has been a pretty sustained, deep conversation for the last couple of decades now on the notion of community power and relocalization and claiming the commons politically, economically, structurally.
You're getting a little wobbly there,
There
Nancy.
may be. Okay, you probably got.
There's been a global or a recent conversation for a few decades about, and then we started to lose you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Okay, about community power, relocalization, reclaiming the commons. Their movements and concepts, economically, politically, structurally. It would be good to have a sense of those and point to those both as deeper understanding of what is needed and what is possible, what is already happening, what strategies are in play, and who we might be able to hook up with around those concepts.
Do you know?
Did that all come through?
Yes.
Yes,
Do
that
you
was
know of
great.
any resources, specific names that we could go so we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Not literally off the top of my head. That's why I said I wish I knew more. But I could readily find some. You probably could too, but because I know what I'm looking for, I can go back and pull out some of those things.
That would be excellent, because I agree with you that we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to push it.
Yes, well said. Nicely said. Nicely said.
Thank you.
There's a good metaphor for you.
Yeah, I love it.
So, yeah. Yeah, a yes and. The strategizing relies on the strategizing of which I'm happy to outline. You know, the framework for it. It relies on exactly what the vision is. And I guess maybe I'm feeling like creating a framework of the strategizing for the video, and then stepping away from that and talking about the vision. And then once we feel relatively satisfied with the vision, then we can go back to that framework for strategizing the first video attempt, and dive all the way into that conversation. How does that sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So I have a notepad, but I think it'd be better to do an otter.io for this.
Okay. I'm doing that actually.
Amazing. Okay,
Yes.
great.
The whole thing, I think.
Great. So 154.30. I'm going to just dive into the framework for the video now.
Okay.
The first thing to figure out is which audiences are we directing the video to? And based on those, and it would be good to have like a hierarchy of audiences, of most important to reach out to, or most urgent to reach out to, and least urgent. That way we can narrow down what format the video should take, or which few formats should the videos take to be directed at X specific audiences, 2 or 3, or maybe just 1. And from there, I'm sensing that the formats will have to rely on, the formats will rely on the method of communication, like the channel of communication, because like Derek presenced, we can't say everything we might want to say on Facebook.
Oh, I think we can get away with a lot, actually. It's kind of depends where you put things. I saw just recently, part of what made me think of this is a Zoom meeting webinar that was not, you didn't get to it on Zoom, you got to it on Facebook. But it was about rent freezing, freezing rents and mortgage payments. Very much what Derek said. I'm not going to reiterate it because he said it better.
Mhm.
But, you know, with, and with people who, for the most part, no one has ever heard of, who are just people who care a lot about people having a secure place of their own in America, who were there with helpful information about the numbers of us, what we're going through, who are, we're already housing insecure because of the gap between wages and housing costs, rents and home prices both, but now are in a housing emergency. So, I think that was on something called Now This. There's a few different Facebook video networks that are kind of tilted towards progressives. But I would be inclined maybe to say any of us who have time could, like if you had time, Benny, but I'll do it too, could just sort of look around. Facebook's a good place because people are already there. But look around for venues to advertise these things. I would like to find not me, us, Sanders campaign congregating places online because I think those are the people who are sort of all revved up and ready to go with a Make Americans safe, secure our people agenda. They're the ones who are the most natural advocates. And they're very good at not taking no for an answer.
Wonderful. So I'm hearing...
Indivisible too.
And indivisible. So I'm hearing a potential primary audience and a potential format, which to me sounds like the most uncensorable format would be a Zoom webinar that might just be a screen share of a pre-recorded video.
Right.
And this could be potentially paid distribution on channels. Obviously, the Zoom account would need to be the appropriate level. And, we could theoretically empower people to set up their own screen share of this video at any time, which would give it the viral potential that is in the hands of the people, so to speak. But that's also like kind of going very far into a dreaming. But anyways, so we have started the list of the potential audience, and we've started the list of formats given the potential audience. I see the next step in the strategizing to be I guess I want to clarify that the format is not just the format of distribution. Below the format of distribution, there is the format of content. It could be a talking head, or it could be a fully, just more or less animated media semi-advertisement format, or somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, a combination, multimedia, what have you. And that depends on I think it depends on the audience and the channel of distribution. So, and then below the format of the content is the content itself. What is the ultimate message and the ultimate inspirations towards participation that we wish to communicate.
This may be repeating something you've already said or assumed, Benny, but somewhere, can you hear me, or is my background noise way too big?
No, we hear you.
I had to plug my phone in. I had 1% left. Is the impact when you, if I were doing this strategically, at the outset, I might say, what are the changes that I'm trying to promote? And then where are the pivotal points for doing that, and who is at those points, which audiences are critical in making that change, and then what impact, what effect do I want to have on them, and what is the best way of having that impact? And that's partly a question of how to reach them, how to message, but right now critical at the point of content is what effect, what do you want to shift their understandings, move their hearts, expand their imagination about what can be done or must be done, what tools and resources exist, what skills they are trying to elicit from them, their engagement, etc. So I think that having that conversation will then in turn help ground the conversation about both content and format, and then, as I said earlier, more fundamentally even, who's the audience in the first place, because what effects are we trying to have, and what, when we say who's the best audience or the most important audience, it depends on what effect we're trying to have, and therefore which audiences are best positioned that we most need to have what kind of effect on in order to have that larger impact, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Totally does.
thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, so once we have big picture vision to the short-term change that leads into the audience, which then leads into 2 levels of format, leading into content. We have the hierarchy of the content strategizing, which is the ultimate message, and the ultimate inspirations towards participation. And from there, we then can strategize and figure out the specific story arc and functional metaphors to employ.
Yep.
Let me insert one other consideration at that level that I struggle with a lot. In which end of the question do we grab it by? Our tendency typically is to grab it from the problem end. Here's what's wrong. Here's the gap. Or maybe a moment of inspiration. Here's what should be. Here's what is. Here's the gap. What do we do about it? But where possible, I think if we can say, oh my God, look at what is going on in this place. look at what these people are trying to do. Look at this change that could occur, and inspire people, energize them with a sense of what is possible, because the sense of powerlessness, either there are no solutions to our problems, or even if there are, we're powerless to implement them. To break through that at the very beginning with, wow, here is, like about rent. What are some breakthrough things that people have done? Some of them just, the notion of taking over on properties and so forth. I'm not pushing that particularly. I'm just saying starting with that grabs people's attention, energizes them, and breaks through the we don't know what we could do, we don't know how to do it question. And it becomes a sort of reverse engineering approach to getting to what is the problem. Because often the most powerful solutions that excite people are something, quote, nobody had thought of before. But once you see that in action and see that it's working unexpectedly, and then reverse engineer back to what that can flip your understanding of what the problem actually was or what needed to be addressed, as well as starting from a very high energy place. And then you can say, well, what would keep us from doing this? What would get in the way? Well, now we have a target for possible actions, and instead of what would get in the way being, oh my God, we can't do it, because it's rather strategically, okay, here's part of what we would have to address in order to make this solution work. And by the way, here's some of the solution, here's some of the strategies that have been used to fend that off. That's very abstract, and I'm not in a space right now to give concrete examples, but that's one of the reasons that my work focuses so much on stories, because then you can take the stories apart and both have suggestive answers to the questions and backing into what are the core questions that a good strategy needs to address. Again, if that's making sense, it's a lot of pieces kind of jumbled up.
So thank you so much. I want to just offer some synthetic reflection. I heard you say that our approach to every step, but in particular, the short-term change that we wish to affect using the video or videos should not be brainstormed and revolve around we need dramatic change, implying we're kind of fucked and struggling to get something done. But instead, the brainstorming should revolve around what is going on right now that we can collectively uplift. Do you want to add anything with that reflection I just offered? That this.
Only this. Basically, you caught it. The word should, rather what I was saying, we should, in making decisions about content, one of the questions is to question what is the best end of the message to grab hold of first. And I think often the best end is the one I was just describing. But I would want that to be a question, not saying it should be that. I'm saying that's often the way to do it for these reasons. But then there may be other cases where a very dramatic statement of what is wrong or something may be the right starting point. But it's, at the moment, I'm putting it in as one of the content strategy questions.
Okay, so we should ask ourselves, what is the best end while we're framing our contents and message strategizing.
Right. Bearing in mind, and I'm just saying this because I'm starting to get a little uneasy feeling that we may be unraveling something that I think was pretty intact. I thought that Derek and I sort of between the two of us, and I'm not sure if Nancy was online for all of it, I thought we made the case for freezing rent, freezing mortgage payments, freezing charges. I would freeze charges for essential utilities personally, but I think we made the general case that it is just not okay to have this many of us experiencing this much hardship and uncertainty. We were having completely intolerable levels of hardship and uncertainty before COVID-19. But again, no right to food and water is with this many people is a downgrade. That is just, we can't allow it. So how we talk about that, I mean, I don't think that we're trying to reach people who find that problematic. I think what we want to do is or what I at least had envisioned, is to create both a sort of, oh, well, that person is just being very sensible. Of course we need to do that. And a little sort of, not so much inspiration, it's just like a reminder that we are in fact a people. Being a body politic, I had my little medical way of talking about it. Another way to talk about it is like a marriage. Marriages lose their luster, people kind of pull apart. You don't have to surrender to that. I mean, maybe it's something you can change, maybe it isn't. But one of the things people do is occasionally they renew their vows. They find a way of saying, you are still really, really important to me. And one of the oldest American ways of thinking about being a people, and this was even at the township level, it's not about centralization, but one of the oldest ways of thinking about it is kind of like a marriage, a covenant, right? We've agreed as a people that we're all going to live under a certain set of principles, which were already had been rendered so weak and feeble and insecure and dramatically at odds with how things are actually, how we're actually living, that they weren't, certainly were not vibrant, but still, that what we want is to make people see not just that there is still abundance here, there's no reason for anyone to be experiencing want and insecurity in that way, right? Food and water didn't disappear, but also that our ability to honor each other's humanity didn't disappear. Our ability to create order didn't disappear, right? Because there is this failure to respond in Washington. What we don't want to do, because we've been doing it for 40 years, is internalize that and say, oh, well, no, of course, they never respond. This is a 5-alarm fire. If they don't respond in a helpful way, they will respond in a really unhelpful way. So I think, what I want is to give people a target, but also a sense that, of course, a lot of coursenesses. Of course.
And I'll say that I think what I am so excited about in this time is how people have been put on pause and given an opportunity to think about what's going on.
Yeah.
Normally they are so nose to the grindstone between work and school and distractions and all of that. We're not going to reach everybody because some people are self-medicating even more than before. Some people are locked up in their routines of violence even more than before. But there are going to be a lot of people out there that normally would not have had even a pause to think about, it doesn't have to be this way. And so if we can just explicitly say it doesn't have to be this way, there are alternatives. And here's what this might look like. Here's where we might be coming from in a different way to take care of each other rather than to compete with each other. And so that's what I see as the opportunity here. And clearly, as I've already mentioned, I think the people dealing with housing and the people that are dealing with medical issues and medical healthcare concerns are two prime audiences in our part of the world, meaning California, meaning Bay Area. Those are two huge audiences that are ripe for this message of it doesn't have to be this way. We can make a difference.
Yes.
It sounds like we've got a plan.
I think so. Now we're down to when and where and how and minor details.
Yeah. I am ready and willing to prioritize this in my life. I'm not asking any of you to do the same, and there is no judgment if that is impossible for any of you right now. So I just want to say that I have an open schedule.
I'm fairly open. I usually have one, maybe two things a day for an hour and a half, something like that. But otherwise, I'm fairly wide open too.
This is the most important thing I can think of to do right now. So I'm busy, but this gets priority. I will make the time.
So it sounds like what would be a good time tomorrow?
Hang on, let me look.
I cannot do 2 to 3 tomorrow.
I actually am pretty open. How about what works well for you, Derek?
Well, I cannot do 2 to 3.
Yeah, but what would work well for you?
Anything beyond that. Okay. I mean, I usually deal with food about 11 to 12, but that's not a mandatory thing.
Well, I'm always I am an early riser, so we can certainly do it in the morning as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, we can do it after you're free again in the afternoon. Both work for me.
Nancy, do you have any input on this? Keep in mind, Nancy, you're still muted. There we go.
I'm committed. I have to be committed. I'm in 4 or 5 things I have to pull back from because each day goes by and the writing I've committed to do doesn't happen. But it very, very deeply overlaps with the conversation you're having. So I think rather than my committing to new work, what I'd like to do is commit to drawing the connections, if I may, between what you're doing and where it overlaps with what I'm doing and seeing how helpful, if at all, that might be for you. And meanwhile, really valuing what you're doing and keep just being part of the co-thinking, I guess, as I'm able. And tomorrow I have 2 or 3 Zoom calls. I was in 8 hours of Zoom calls yesterday in a row. So I'm really trying to figure out how to
manage that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had, as you know, we just moved home a couple of weeks ago, but we had literally weeks and weeks of laundry and moving between homes. And I finally said, the only way I can do this today is do laundry while doing it, which turned out to be all kinds of problems.
Sure. Okay. Well.
Wholehearted support, and I will try to find a space I can be of genuine use. Thanks for including me.
Hello.
So Benny, what's tomorrow look like for you?
I think that 3 p.m. would be great.
Okay. 3 works for me.
Cool.
And Paul just got on the phone, so we'll wait for him to get off and come back and confirm that with him.
And I'm wondering if it might be useful to create maybe to decide on whether or not we want to have a document of any form that summarizes the position we're moving from tomorrow. Maybe, I guess my thought would be just a simple documentation of only the most important aspects of what we've talked about today for what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And I think that we also want to clarify exactly what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And I believe that that is the big picture vision, because that will inform the short-term change that we wish to make with these video parentheses S. And I want to voice that I believe we all have a sense, like we all have a pretty common sense of the big picture vision and the short-term change. But I heard that collective clarification is wanted and potentially even needed before moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And we also have to be cognizant of how we make the key points that we want to make in a short period of time, because we're not going to be able to go 2 hours on video and keep people's attention.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally. Okay. So
so I don't know if you caught that, Paul. We're talking about 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, because it'll give us a little time to prepare. There's a few things I'd like to do. A little gathering. Oh, speaking of which, Benny, can I suggest something?
Sure, of course.
Just because you said that you were willing to spend some time. I didn't even know if this is helpful, so feel free to ignore it. But I'll send all of you a link to the Otter transcript. I was thinking, I mean, we might want to see if there's stuff there that's concise and powerful. Sometimes when you just are talking spontaneously, you say things with greater clarity and force and concision than when you sort of try to be very deliberate about it. A good rule from my nephew, the filmmaker, is that we cannot talk any faster on video than 150 words a minute.
So I can go through the recording and the transcript with the notes that I've taken so far on timings of certain things. I've taken a couple notes on timings of key things, and I can at least grab text and edit text, and potentially even grab clips as well.
That'd be nice.
But do you think it would be, I want to ask if you think it would be more timely and useful, yeah, and I think also, I guess I'm going to step back and say, in addition to that, I will also have a quick, like a meta framework for our approach, like our steps to be taken. I have that already handwritten, and I can put that into a Google Doc.
Nice.
And then, so we'll have, you guys all use Google Drive?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then at 3 p.m. tomorrow, we'll be able to tap into that resource if we need to do some live stuff, but I don't think we will. And are there any more logistical things y'all want to surface and clear up here?
I don't think so. I think I have to go, but I am really grateful for this meeting. This is good.
I also. Yep.
Yeah. I really am overwhelmed with gratitude, and I feel like, yeah, I'm feeling very open, and there's a lot of hopeful curiosity. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for so much for opening up this space for us. It was wonderful.
Yes. And thank you for joining us, Nancy.
Yeah.
Despite all the problems, we still appreciate you here.
Yep.
Thanks.
All righty. Be well. Back again at 3 tomorrow.